We're live.
It should
Hey
also
guys.
be,
Hey everybody. Welcome to the Game Audio Hour number 64. Yeah, 64. I've been gone for a couple of weeks, I think. Anyway, it's our weekly podcast where we discuss all things game audio, from creative ideas to the latest technology. No, I didn't. I didn't do that, did I? After all this time. Latest techniques, project experiences to audio secrets. Here's where you'll find in-depth coverage and opinions related to... Get it in there. Vince, you look so smiley and happy. How are you?
I'm doing all right. It's been a good weekend. It's been a nice start to the week so far. Productive meetings here at work, and it's always nice when you can get the week started off on the right foot. And you're churning out music. All those sound effects they're working the way that you thought they were at the end of last week. It's a nice feeling, isn't it?
That's awesome, man. I'm glad to hear it. Mike, are you having the same success?
I am. You know what I was thinking, actually? As you know, we host the show in Google Hangouts, and every time I head over to participate, I go to Google+, because I guess that's where you launch Google Hangouts, and I'm greeted with a list of suggestions for people I should add as friends or in my circles in Google+, and I spend about 5 minutes clicking and categorizing, and I always ask myself, why am I doing this? The social network has no meaning whatsoever. So that was my pontification for the day. I'm doing great.
Nice. I approve your pontification. You look like a pontiff.
Well, thank you. That could be a second career if the music thing doesn't work out.
Under the those root of the same.
Wow, Kyle's actually got some latency. That's unusual.
No way.
Ooh.
Is it bad?
It's okay. We can hear you. Enough.
All right. I went down to medium. Oh, look how beautiful I look in medium. So, Alex, how are you?
I'm good. I'm very happy today because, as our regular viewers will note, this is the first time that the core panel of the four of us have actually been assembled here for about probably 5 or 6 weeks, I think. We've been kind of jumping in and out and making people suspicious about whether two of us are actually the same person, wearing, like Mission Impossible style masks or something. But we're all different people and we're all here, so it's good to be all back together. And
yeah. Are you guys taking off masks? I see you and Mike like ripping off masks.
That's right. I'm looking forward to. So we're just talking in the green room about the wonderful city of Los Angeles, because this will be I'm going to E3, and this will be my first time to experience probably what most Americans from other parts of the country say is the worst place in America. Like when I say I'm going to Los Angeles, they say, "Oh, look, I'm really sorry." Mind you, most of the people I know who are not from California are from New England up that way, up in the Northeast, and so I guess they don't really like California up there. So anyway,
genetically they have to hate California.
It's funny that the people up there say that it's terrible, and the people down in from Los Angeles, California, all they can say when I talk about Los Angeles is Mexican food. It's all I hear about is Mexican food. Everything's Mexican food. Do you do anything else down there except make movies and eat Mexican food?
What else
is there?
Yeah, see, there you go. You guys are from California.
Well, you haven't had proper Mexican food. I tried finding proper Mexican food when I was in Japan, and no go. You're going to enjoy this when you come down here.
I've been to some pretty good places in San Francisco. So I don't know if there's one place in Mission that my friend took me to several times, which is apparently very good, constantly packed out with people. So I don't know if that's a good sign or not. But anyway, so Los Angeles. Yeah, as I was telling Mike, the first thing I do, being my first time in Los Angeles, want to prepare myself. So I go to Google and type in Compton, and then get all of this kind of cool stuff about Los Angeles. And this place looks like somewhere that I don't really want to go. Well,
why did you say Compton instead of just Los Angeles proper?
What do you think about when you think of Los Angeles? Of course you think of Ice Cube and, NWA and...
Your blood.
The general heuristic is don't go to any place that's been mentioned in a rap song.
I see.
And it's okay to go to places that have been mentioned in Tom Petty songs.
If you do that, that kind of rules out the entire city, because just the LA, and everything is LA. So anyway, I am looking forward to not looking forward to Los Angeles, but I'm looking forward to seeing you guys.
Thanks, buddy. I can't wait till you get here.
It's going to be. You got a space for me underneath your Moog there?
We have a lot of latency, don't we?
Carl's going to be making a bed of cables for me to sleep on, so that's going to be nice.
Yeah, Alex is staying here. I'm super excited. I don't live in Los Angeles, Alex. I hate to break the news to you. You're going to be north of Los Angeles in this beautiful seaside surf town called Ventura.
Is that like Jim Carrey Ace Ventura?
No, but when the fish factory has done a fresh slaughter, I definitely would say don't go in there, if you know what I mean. This whole town can stink when this factory we have here just pumps out a bunch of horrible air.
I see.
It only happens like once a month or something. I think it's a fish factory. Somebody else said it was something else, like I don't know, like a broccoli factory? I don't know what it is. You know how broccoli smells like a fart? Have you guys noticed that? Broccoli is one of the worst smelling plants ever.
Did you know that broccoli is actually Brussels sprouts and cauliflower?
Yeah, it's the exact same plant. Just cultivated in different ways.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Hence broccoli, because it's Brussels sprouts and cauliflower merged together as broccoli.
Interesting. I mean, not really interesting.
Like cauliflower, right? And then broccoli for me is in the middle, and Brussels sprouts with lima beans is one of the things that God placed on this earth to purposely try to kill humans.
Right.
So
this is...
yeah, that's a funny joke in some countries.
So welcome everybody this week to Vegetable Audio Hour. We talk about vegetables and audio. So let's move on to audio now that we've touched on vegetables.
You guys have a surprise topic. I'm just waiting for you to kick it off. I blame you.
All right. Okay. Well, just as a little segue there, while we're talking about blame, today, actually in the green room, actually Vince brought it up because he was mentioning something about his hardware, and then I actually recalled that previously we thought that would be a really good topic, so we're going to roll it out today, and here it is. So basically, the topic is portable production, or maybe a better way to put it is transportable production. Not necessarily sort of, making music as you're walking down the street, but at least a rig that you can pick up and take with you somewhere. For game audio people, we're in a difficult place, aren't we? Because to have a good monitoring setup, you need a studio, you need speakers in front of you, you need soundproofing and acoustic treatment. Not to mention if you're Kyle, you need wall-to-wall racks of vintage gear and keyboards everywhere. And if you're Mike, you need like a massive orchestra in front of you. And if you're Vince, you need your Game Boys and your old Segas and Nintendos and crap like that. But actually, even though we need all of this hardware gear, when you think about it, portable production, especially for the freelance game audio person, is actually kind of important. Number one, if you're starting out, then of course participating in game jams is a very, very useful, important, and fun way to get started, get some credits to your name, get some experience. So of course, if you're doing a game jam, then you need to take something with you. So there's that. Also, if you are fortunate enough to have the contracts working as a freelance game audio person, if you're lucky, the best way to do that is to actually go onto the client's site and work right there with the designers and the artists and the programmers. And in that case as well, being able to be portable or transportable is really useful. And that's exactly what happened to me, because I'm working at the moment at Vitae Backroom in Kyoto, and it's a fantastic place to be, and I love working with the guys. When I first got there, though, I didn't have any portable computer, so I had to ask them, can you get me a computer so that I can do my work here? Which automatically sort of, well, geez, this guy's kind of expensive, isn't he? And then once you've got the computer, then you've got to put all these plugins on it, and you've got to get a setup on the computer there that you're comfortable with, that you can also work with between the computer there and the computer at home. And then they wanted me to use Windows, but actually I'm at home on a Mac, and it's this whole kind of, kept on coming back to the point that, gee, it would be really handy if I could have some way to take something there with me. So let's crack this topic open. What are your suggestions or experiences with transportable game audio production?
Well, I've been messing with transportable production for a while. When I was working on Flower for PS3 back in 2007, 2008, there was about 60% of the music and sound effects that I did on my desktop machine, which was an okay machine at the time. It was a Pentium 4 2.4 gigahertz machine. Okay, that was high end back in 2004, 2005. And then I did about 40% of the work actually at that game company's offices. And I had, back then, this Toshiba laptop. And the cool thing about it was the Wacom pen, because I was really big on pen computing at the time. The processor that was in there really wasn't all that much. It was one of those 1.5 gigahertz Centrinos. Anyways, the thing that I'm thinking about these days is doing that again. I've been actually tied down to a desk for quite a while. I've got my desktop machine, which is one of these fancy Intel Core i5 things. But I also recently picked up a Microsoft Surface 3, which is Microsoft's big bid to be a computer that's a better tablet than the iPad, but also a better laptop than a traditional laptop. And to do that, they put in a very low-power Intel Atom processor. And it's funny, looking at that Intel Atom processor, it takes up, it uses almost no power. There's no fan needed for the machine. And just in terms of pure arithmetic power, it's about 6 to 8 times more powerful than that Pentium 4 that I had driving my desktop rig when I was doing what I thought was pretty serious game music and audio production back in the late 2000s. So it's pretty cool, actually. I've been doing my own experiments with this Surface 3 machine, and there are actually some guys on YouTube that have been showing, hey, here's an Ableton project on a Surface 3. Here's some Logic stuff on a Surface 3. Here's some other audio production software that's running on a Surface 3. And wow, it's kind of cool that this thing, which is a pretty low-end machine in terms of its pure tech, it totally runs a lot of the software that we use on a day-to-day basis for our music and sound design needs.
What's I guess the elephant in the room when we talk about transportable music production is monitoring. So I use these.
Yep.
When I go to Vita, and I got these just because they're tough. They're this is the M50X from Audio-Technica. They're tough and they're robust and they're decent sound enough for monitoring. However, it's never ideal when you're monitoring anywhere other than your studio, because you've got, in my case, you've got an air conditioner right on top of me. I've got people all behind me. People are talking. There's constant sounds of mouse clicks, and of course the air conditioner is very noisy on top of me. So in those days, what did you used to do about monitoring? How did you get sort of good, decent playback when you have to move around in different locations like that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I had a pair of headphones that I really liked. I had these AKG headphones that I just really grew to love, and I got used to them, and I got used to how exactly they translated over onto different speaker systems that I would use. I was very lucky at the time, because where I worked was just a few offices down from where guys would actually be able to check out stuff on this really nice Blue Sky 5.1 monitoring system, which is, that's a pretty high-end system. So if I really wanted to, I could just walk over there, but I actually ended up doing a huge amount of monitoring and mixing and even final mastering on those headphones, and it worked out okay, actually. I think it's actually kind of funny these days with video games, because back in the late 2000s, it was sort of expected that video games were this couch experience. Okay, now we're downloading our games instead of buying the discs at GameStop. But now, actually, the headphone experience is pretty close to the ideal experience for a lot of video games that are coming out, where the primary platform is going to be the iPad or the iPhone or handhelds, and well, that is what you're monitoring, right? Are you going to be monitoring? It is good to make your assets on something that is, a full bandwidth monitoring setup, but if you're going to be making, say, a 3DS game, well, hey, what you got in your hand is actually pretty good.
Yeah, there's the issues that I have with monitoring on headphones. I mean, obviously, music production guys will tell you that yes, it's great to reference headphones every now and then, but number one, you deal with the issue of you've got to be very careful with your hearing, of course. Sitting there with headphones on your head for like 8 hours, before you know it, you've turned the volume up quite loud because your ears are getting more and more fatigued, and that's very, very bad for you on an everyday basis. As you say, though, like at the moment I'm working on a VR game, and 98% of the people who are going to be using a VR game will be playing it with headphones, so I'm sort of required to use headphones. But the other problem is you just don't get that, especially when you're writing music. With headphones, you just don't get that sort of, it's for some reason anyway. When you're writing music, it's hard to sort of get that vibe, especially if you're writing music that needs to make you feel a certain way. Where there's like kind of cups on your ears, and you sort of put it on the speakers, and all of a sudden everything's moving, and people are taking their clothes off, and there's parties in the streets and stuff.
Yeah.
Well, at least that's what happens with my music. I'm not sure about you guys.
I mean, it's true though. Even if if you do have that full response with your headphones, listening to music is a full body experience, and listening to even a half decent consumer hi-fi setup with some bass response, you should be able to feel music as much as you hear them, and you don't get that with cans.
Right. So that's a big problem, especially with game audio. But what about Mike? What about you? Actually, I'm curious, Mike. When part of your process, when you've created, especially working in an orchestral context, do you take a computer with you when you go to actually record with an orchestra? And if so, what and why?
I'm trying to remember my answer to that. I think by and large I try not to do that, because the last thing you want is for some kind of tech hiccup to cause a session to slow down. I typically like to export everything into Pro Tools, which is invariably what the engineer at the studio will be using. If I've got stuff in virtual instruments, I'll flatten it down and bounce it and just have that as a reference track for the session, and then bring everything back home. So that's a big damper on the topic. So instead, let me try to find an angle to enter the topic and talk about the application I do find for mobile production, which is notation. And there have been a couple of occasions where I did have some orchestration work to do, or some MIDI extraction / translate into notation kind of work. There was one occasion where I was doing a project like that. I was doing some work like that on a project for Disney, and the schedule overlapped E3, and I just wanted to get going as soon as possible, so I chiseled off a couple of hours of every evening at, I'm sorry, not E3, it was GDC, so I was on the road, and I installed MacBook Pro and Sibelius, and I was able to take MIDI data and do a little bit of neatening up and export it over to Sibelius and continue to work that way. And I found that to be reasonably ergonomically possible. The limitations of a laptop were not too bad for me, just in terms of physically accessing your computer and getting the flow, where you've got all your custom key maps and everything is kind of this effortless workflow. I was able to recreate that on the road pretty well with a MacBook Pro. The interesting problem that arises is, let's say you're doing something notation-based, you generally still want to be able to listen to what you're doing. And in Sibelius, or another notation program, if you're on a portable machine, you typically don't have access to your gargantuan sound libraries where there are 600 versions of every possible pizzicato violin, and you pick just the right one like you would in a production environment. On the road, you don't have, at least I don't, have enough space on my MacBook Pro, and it kind of offends my sensibilities to bring any kind of external hard drives with me. So interesting problem is, how do you audition what you're doing just to listen for typos or to get some first-order approximation of the orchestra or whatever kind of ensemble you're doing? And in the past, my solution was pretty terrible, which was just pipe everything through piano, because that's what Sibelius has handy, and just try to listen and maybe mute the drum tracks. You don't hear your snare drum coming through as a D5 or something like that. Recently, Vince on this show actually tipped me off to a very useful tool that I can see myself using the next time I need to take Sibelius on the road on the MacBook Pro, and that is I don't want to call it a plugin, but it's kind of an all-purpose module for Sibelius called Note Performer by Wallander Instruments, who many of you may know as producers of modeled virtual instruments, acoustically simulated brass and woodwinds and so forth. And they made what I'll describe as this box, and you just point Sibelius at that box, and suddenly every sound that it plays within the common set of instruments you typically use sounds sort of okay. And I'm speaking in terms of the state-of-the-art of sampled orchestral instruments. There are also some band instruments. You've got bass and drums and some world instruments as well. I personally tend to use it more for auditioning orchestral stuff. It's got a decent set of solo brass and woodwind articulations, and everything is at least better than when you get out of the box in Sibelius. Everything grinds against your soul a little bit less and feels a little more realistic. Some of the wind articulations actually sound pretty darn good. And I believe this is using some of the modeling technology that was in the Wallander Instruments, the case where they're basically simulating the acoustics of a flute or French horn whole cloth and just building it from nothing. So what's great here is that means you don't need 1.5 billion samples for your virtual orchestra. You've got a fairly lightweight, low-footprint module that gives you okay sounds that'll fit on your portable computer, and is a very practical solution for going on the road. So I found this really, really useful, and I can definitely see myself just kind of curling up with Sibelius in a hotel room in lieu of seeing human beings socially, instead just kind of writing music and playing around with this thing and feeling like it kind of sounds good enough to not offend me and let the creative juices get flowing. So I have to hat tip to Vince for pointing out that tool, and I definitely going to bring it with me the next time on the road.
What about interfaces? When in those kinds of situations, do you just plug your headphones right into your laptops, or do you actually have a USB interface that you use?
I personally, since we're not talking about production work, I'm not recording anything, and fidelity of the audio is already kind of a lost cause, I just plug the headphones right into the D-to-A converter of my computer, and I've got some over-the-ear Sonys or something like that. I'm not as discriminating in that regard as my fellow panelists.
Speaking of fellow panelists, there's the other guy right in the end there in orange who's being very, very quiet. Let's ask what he thinks.
Never forget this.
What's that?
iLock.
Oh, iLock. Ooh. Oh.
There's the end of your remote gig if you forget that guy.
Mm-hmm.
Remote. So for me, it's just a laptop. At that point, it depends on, and also biodynamic headphones. I use the DT 770s, and so if I'm recording like a voiceover, I also put in my car 3 panels, like the panels behind me that I don't have hooked up to anything, so that I can stand them on stools and put a person in there. I'll take obviously a mic stand and a windscreen. If I'm doing, oh, go ahead.
Oh, that's for recording. But so do you actually, for example, if you're needing to do music production on site, what will you use in that situation?
It all depends, right? What equipment I'm going to take depends upon what I'm going to record. So when I record a choir, because the choir that my wife used to be in, I would record, not this new one. I would take these specific ribbon mics that I like to use called Shiny Box. They sounded really good on there, and I'd set those up. And again, the laptop and an audio interface system O2. Headphones. If I'm recording, like if I'm going to write some kind of music or something, the software I take is a lot of Sam's stuff for orchestral things. It seems to run pretty good, and they have some built-in stuff for Ableton that's really good. It's like $99, and you get. Am I lagging, guys? Because it looks laggy from my end.
You are, but we can hear you.
Oh, okay. So I'm sorry I trailed off there. It's because I could see the faces in my screen all locked up. You guys look like it was pretty funny. You were popping and locking, and you didn't even know it.
We'll just keep moving.
Yeah. So the software for orchestral stuff, it depends. Whatever. I haven't. Go, Vince. Go. Vince is popping. Oh, you're all. Oh, geez. Alex is pulling out the wave. That's a real lag tester right there. Very smooth. Okay. A very good sine wave you pulled off. But I don't do a lot of remote stuff. That's what makes this difficult for me, because in the end, my laptop is an old Power Mac, or no, MacBook Pro. At least it's a MacBook Pro. It's not Power Mac.
Okay.
It's super old, so it's great for like recording stuff and taking the native instrument where Ableton. I am soon to die. It's not going to last very long. But the reason I haven't upgraded the laptop is because I don't really remote for that stuff. But there was a day where I thought I needed that, and that was the laptop. When that laptop was new, I was still using the SAM stuff, and I was using Native Instruments things, and I use my template for Ableton. I have in both on my laptop and on my computer, so I can just bring it up, and it automatically loads up Contact, and it loads up Play Engine. And does things like that. Does that answer the question?
Kind of, yeah. I'm wondering whether if somebody's wanting, for example, if somebody's watching who's sort of a game jam or I guess portable-centric kind of producer who's needing to do things off-site a lot, is it enough for said person to just have a Surface Pro 3 or to just have a MacBook Pro, no interface, just a set of headphones, no speakers, just everything on one computer that you can just pick up and go and grab your headphones? I wonder if that's enough, or do you think that it's probably better for somebody to make sure that they at least have an external interface? I guess if you're going to recording, then you probably want external interface, but if you're not recording, I wonder just how necessary it really is.
I think you're fine. If you're going to a game jam, you're not building Call of Duty. So there's not as much demand on the audio. There's still a lot of demand on the talent, but the quality of the audio or the choices that you can make, you're going to be in the box. You're probably going to be making some side scroller type of sounds. If you are doing something that is really pushing the limits of a game jam, it's going to be a very, very a very kind of intense game for a game jam, and you're going to start using, like, say, gun sounds or something like that. I keep my sound effects library synced between my machine and an external hard drive, so I can just grab the external hard drive and go with my laptop to do sound design from there and have this library of sounds that I can work with. But in the end, I really only need my laptop, whether it's a game jam or just I want to work remotely. If I'm doing sound design, it's just a laptop. And my iLock, because I don't know if I'm going to be in Pro Tools or if I'm with the team and everybody's on Pro Tools and I should be in Pro Tools or Ableton. I think especially I could actually pull that off with my old MacBook Pro, so that I'm like 8 years old on that laptop, so I know that today's technology people can do a lot. Vince has got us looking at something.
He's got us looking at a keytar.
It's a keytar. This was my setup, actually, back when I was part of the Indie Game Jam 3 production in 2005. Back in the day, they would do these indie game jams that were the weekend right before GDC week, and I ended up bringing my tablet computer and a portable this was actually a FireWire interface, little 2x2 FireWire interface, and my keytar. And I got pretty much everything that I needed to get done. On the other side, you could actually sort of make out that another dude actually brought his little Pro Tools rig, because he's got I can't remember the name of this particular unit, but it was like he was running Pro Tools at the time. And
oh, behind you?
Yeah, behind me, right on top of the screen.
I think they call that Mix.io. It might have been an M-Audio.
Oh yeah, during that whole M-Audio Pro Tools time.
Yeah, I think it's an M-Audio mixer.
Yeah, so he was doing that, and he also had the USB keyboard as well. And that was pretty much what all the audio guys had. Everyone had an interface. Everyone had some sort of note input, because everyone was sort of a combo music sound design guy.
Mm-hmm.
These days I think it's a little bit different. If I was a Mac guy, I might be able to get away with just having the computer and no interface, especially if I wasn't recording anything. Just because it is possible to get low latency with the built-in Mac stuff. With Windows stuff, there are those generic Osio drivers that you could possibly do low latency stuff with, but with Windows hardware being sort of all over the place, that's a little bit more of a crapshoot compared to the Apple hardware. So, I know for my Surface, I knew that I didn't want to chance it with that, and I was always wanting to get a USB interface, because one of the things that I do when I am on the go is I do record voice. So I do have a little combo interface USB, little mixing console here.
Oh, nice.
Got this little Yamaha thing, and I'm not actually using this right now. I was wanting to test it, except for the fact that I left all of my XLR cables at home. I thought I usually keep something like 6 or 8 cables around the office, and while I was recording out somewhere else, I just grabbed a bunch, threw it in my car, went out, and I now cannot actually test this thing, so I'll have to wait until tomorrow for that. But
funny how Yamaha continues to make gear that looks so distinctively Yamaha, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, taking a glance at that, you would know that is definitely not Korg and it's not Roland. It's not Roland because it doesn't have lines and freaking green lights on it. Green lights. What were they thinking? Why green?
Well, one thing that we left out is a copy of Wise or Fmod, whatever you're using. You got to have that on there too.
Oh, that's a given.
Right.
Yeah. So you've got for me, sound design. It's a hard drive. It's Ableton. It's Wise. Jam, and some sort like Vince said, I use a Motu interface, but have some sort of note input if you're going to be doing any of the music or composition. And I use Native Instruments and Sam stuff, I guess. But we should be using our iPad. I want to be able to go with my iPad. Wise for the iPad, guys.
No, I don't know. I don't know that that's a good idea. I mean, Wise itself is so granular that having to have that on a touchscreen interface, you touch the wrong thing, and then the whole mix is gone.
or you take like 4 fingers and you touch the 4 items you want to put in a random container, and you drag them all over, and you hold it for a second, and this thing encapsulates them and throws them in a container. Oh.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. But Wise is, one thing about Audio Kinetic that is they make absolutely incredible middleware. However, their interface is not really top priority, I think, as far as the Audio Kinetic goes. So, and I think creating a very usable on a touch screen, making sure that it's very usable, very functional, very fast and quick, it's quite a science. And I think Audio Kinetic should probably just stick to what they do best, which is just making incredible middleware that looks butt ugly.
How come no one has just made some sort of replacement for Fmod or Wise? I mean, I've actually had to do this for previous projects in Fmod and Wise. The files are kind of human readable. and oh man, I came across that one damn bug in Fmod. I'm going to go open up the file, rearrange some stuff, because it's kind of human readable. Because of that, why doesn't someone just make an editor that can do certain things, or it doesn't have to replicate the entire functionality, but it can do things where it just replaces blocks of XML with the right stuff, and then
probably because people are too busy making music and sound, I guess. Because the one good thing, you're right though, having those all of the data files in Wise as text is fantastic. Like just the other day, there was an issue at the team with a merge conflict with Git. However, because Wise's files, the save files are all text, it can just merge them straight together. So there were no actually conflicts in the same files, but the actual sound bank that Wise was not the sound bank. Some of the data files that Wise had generated between two people using Wise could be just merged together into the one project because it's just text and just slots into the one file, that was fantastic. When that happened, merge conflicts, oh no. But then because they're just text, you can just put them straight together, and then you load up the project when it's all solved and done, and both changes are there, and there you go.
Nice.
Yeah.
So while we're on the topic of plugins,
I'm stuck on Vince. Sorry about that, Vince. You became very famous for 5 minutes.
Whoa.
I'm doing a bad direction because like I can tap on a face and it locks on that face, like Alex right now, but then I forget to untap it when somebody else is talking.
Yeah, don't lock on my face. That would be a poor decision. Anyway, so while we're talking about plugins and plugin organization, which we weren't, but we're going to in a few seconds, Kyle.
Yeah.
Plugin organization. How many plugins do you have? 40,000?
Amazing, an unbelievable amount of plugins. It's ridiculous. But so when I especially in Pro Tools, we're about to talk about how I make it easy for me to find the plugins I want to use. The problem, when I install a plugin that's a VST, I go into my VST folder and I create a folder name of the company, and then I drop them all in that folder because it basically just plasters them on OS X into a folder called VST. And with AUs, you don't really have to worry about that because most things that read AU plugins do organize them already by the company name. So if I open an AU in Ableton, if my list of AUs in Ableton, it already has Native Instruments, Waves, whatever. But Pro Tools doesn't do any of that. They organize them by modulation, frequency. It's not like, I think they do call them EQs for the EQs, but other things are like sound field. What's in the sound field folder, Pro Tools, and they've somewhere back in the recesses of Avid, they've got a guy sitting there with a red stapler who is pumping out, who's watching every plugin that comes out, 10 categories they've decided to exist for you and where that thing goes. And so a lot of plugins will also be in multiple locations because it might be compressor EQ together, like a channel strip or something, and that'll be in 2 or 3 different places. So Pro Tools was driving me crazy with trying to organize these things. And on top of that, none of the DAWs that I work with have a picture of the actual plugin. That would be great if I could go into my plugins folder, go down to Native Instruments, or go down to Waves. Let's just get to Waves. And the whole list shows up, but it's got little pictures that you could kind of
Fruity Loops. I mean,
yeah,
the FL Studio. Yeah.
It doesn't need to be a detailed picture because you already pretty much know what it looks like because you've worked with it. But I don't know what like C4 SC compared to C4 mono to C4 stereo. I understand what the mono and stereo mix is, but what's that one I used when I was over at the studio and I fell in love with it and I've never used it before? I know it was C something. This is how this whole thing started. So I was working on looking for this one darn plugin that I fell in love with, and I go, oh, I think it's L2, and I click on it. Nope, that's not it. I close that. I think it's C2 then. Oh, nope, no, it's 2 something. So I go, maybe it's UM2, and I'm all over the friggin' place trying to figure out what this. So I fixed it. I created on paper what the little pictures of my plugins. So now I can just go, maybe it's L1, and I'll look at L1, Ultra Maximizer, and I go, no, that's not the one.
Wow.
That makes it a lot easier.
Wow, that's incredible, Carl.
It's old-fashioned paper, but nothing kind of beats that. Because I don't even want it digitally. I don't want my desktop. This is a reference document, and I don't want to have to leave it up on my desktop because my desktop has got the Pro Tools here. It's got the mixer up on the other. It's got a couple of VSTs all over. I don't want another thing on my screen that I have to deal with. So I just have this piece of paper and the other stuff that's behind it. I'm still printing them out. I actually just started this a couple of days ago. But print out these giant plugins. And this one I fell in love with today.
Look at that.
Have you guys used this? It's called...
That's the API 550 from Waves, isn't it?
Yeah. You still getting the lag? That's the API. This is the UM226, 225. It turns stereo tracks into 5.0 or 5.1, and it's surprisingly good. It's not it's not a true surround mix, but it did some interesting work. But that's how I solved the problem, and I thought, I wonder if that would be useful to anybody. Just print out a few sheets of what your little interfaces look like, and it makes it a lot easier to track things down. What's really beneficial about it to me is, what was a surprise benefit, is that I looked at this sheet here, and I said, oh, I've got Stereo Imager. Let me try that one. And I ended up liking that one better than the isotope spreader that I typically use out of their ozone stuff. So, I've got plugins that are just sitting around that I'm not using that might be better than the ones I go to. So that's my diatribe.
Kyle,
there's something to that.
What is the means you use to print out a nice, cute grid of all your plugins? How did you actually print that out?
Well, this one is just the gold bundle from Waves, and so they already had this picture. They had this area on their website, so I just took a screenshot of like this selection from the web page and hit print. I then created a PDF document and started loading in other things. For 16th of my plugins, they gave me big pictures like this. Now, I printed these out just for the show, but I've been taking them, scrunching them down, and going into a program that I have called Pixelmator and making my own version of this kind of grid for my other plugins. And those pages are sitting out on the printer.
Yeah, so I think FL Studio, the latest version, which is what, 12 or 10 or 11 or somewhere up there, that has that plugin browser where when you pull up the plugin, it shows you thumbnails of all of the interfaces, which is kind of neat. But I sort of wonder, unless you are Kyle and you have 5,763,922 plugins.
You went one over. You were one.
Oh, sorry. I tend to exaggerate. I think I don't know for myself, because I use only AUs, and so they're organized by manufacturer, and then in Renoise you have the ability to create your own favorites folder just by starring the ones that you use very often, and I guess I'm not really at the point yet where I have so many that I can't remember which one is which, and I like to choose plugins that don't cross over too much with what the other ones do, so that every one of them has a very specific purpose and a specific character, which I liked, hence the reason why I would buy it. So I've never gotten myself to the point where I needed such a, where actually having a screenshot of the interface would actually help me remember that sound comes from that plugin.
You're obviously a lot younger than me. You've still got fresh memory meat.
Yeah, or just maybe more poor.
No. Well, the thing is, I buy plugins. I try to get the best deal possible, and what typically happens is it's some sort of bundle deal.
I see.
And then I end up with 7,872 plugins that I don't need for the 5 that I really wanted to get. But the price was good, so I did that. But that's where I found out about these surprises, by having some of the stuff I've never even touched. Renaissance. I don't think I've used a Renaissance anything from Waves, but maybe I'll try it out. Another one that's like this for me is. Oh darn it! I'm not going to think of it. But there's another company that sells, And it took a while for me to get all the pictures together. And that's, again, I just bought a bundle, and I ended up with all this stuff.
Yeah, if you buy...
I've noticed... Oh, go ahead.
Sorry. If you buy bundles, then yeah, that's going to be an issue, because you're going to want these 3, but instead you get 10, and you don't have time to try every one of them enough to sort of build an idea in your head about what it's capable of or how it sounds.
Yeah.
So that's a good point.
Well, at studios, typically, when you go into a recording studio, everything is on. All the lights are gone. I mean, the expense of a recording studio is electricity, I think. That's why it's so expensive to record there. It's because they have to turn everything on to impress you. But typically, I'm being a little bit sour. I apologize. I don't mean that to sound so negative towards studios, because I do enjoy walking in and seeing all the lights. But when I look at the rack of gear that's behind a console, usually my experience is 2 or 3 of those things are being used. Even though 50 of them are on, let's not exaggerate, but probably 30 are on, 2 or 3 are going to be used. And then sometimes they'll even roll in a portable rack of stuff. That's actually what they're using. The other stuff is just on.
That's true.
There are 3 or 4 things that I use a lot to get when I'm mixing. I'll go to those. But I think it's important to know all of that equipment. Even though it's just on and you're not going to use it, you might like this compressor better than that compressor. But it's important to know how that Neve compressor works compared to, say, something else, a SSL or a Chandler, or not SSL, but let's say somebody else. Anyway, the point is, you got to know all that stuff. So buying these bundles is kind of beneficial, right? Because they've got all of this equipment. It's like a recording studio. Everything's there. So start messing with each one and listening and seeing if you like it, and keep refining yourself down to the handful of EQs, the handful of compressors, the couple of reverbs that you really dig. Go to those all the time, but don't just sit back on your laurels. That's what I'm afraid of. If I just keep always using Quantum Leap spaces because I love that reverb, I'm missing out on a lot of reverb technology that's coming out, or a new sound or a new change. And so I'm happy when I get bundles and it's got like waves, it's got this, and I know this is super popular. IR, I don't know. I can't find it on here. I can't find it on my sheet. Anyway, the point is, it's good to buy bundles because you can try a lot of stuff, and don't rest on your laurels.
Yeah, definitely trying. Like I found that with plugins, you really need to, as the expression goes, you need to use them in anger. You really need to be sort of on a deadline, under pressure, under the pump. Okay, I need a reverb right now. Pull this up, maybe pull up some presets. Yeah, that one sounds good. Tweak a little bit. Okay, that's good. Or a sort of very high pressure situation where you really have to. It's no longer about choosing which compressor you want. Now it's about picking the one that for whatever reason is easiest for you to use, and learning that compressor to the bottom of what it can do. That gives you a really good sort of frame of reference then, so that when new companies come out with better compressors, you'll know, is this better than the one that I'm actually used to using? Yes, it is. Great. Then it's a great purchase. Or no, it's not. Well, then leave it, and I'll just stick with what I know best. I often find that now that some of my favorite. So everybody knows that I'm a Yuhi fanboy. A few months ago, Yuhi released a great compressor called Presswerk. And despite having every other Yuhi product that there is and using them all in anger every day, I've actually abstained from getting Presswerk because I tried the demo and it's not better than my favorite compressor, which is still PSP Oldtimer. And just sort of keep on going, but it just can't really. You get the results fast, quick. I know what it's doing. I know how to use it. It sounds fantastic. So yeah. Actually, I was going to say, Mike, do you in the latest version of Logic, there is now a plugin manager. Do you use that? And if you do, how do you use it to organize because you can actually create folders and a whole lot of sort of more granular organization of your AU plugins. How do you use that?
I have used it. I experimented with it when it was first released, and I found it was fairly useful for organizing my stereo bus plugins, which for me is a fairly modest set, but had been spread out through a couple of different menus. I believe Logic also, by default, organizes plugins by manufacturer, so Wave Arts begins with W, which meant all the Wave Arts stuff was all the way at the end of the menu, and Ozone is somewhere else. And there was a certain amount of mental energy spent searching for my options whenever I wanted to do my stereo bus processing. So I made a simple stereo bus stuff folder, and I think I actually called it dash stereo bus folder. I forget if there's an alphabetical constraint, but I put it on the top of the menu, and now that stuff is all lumped together. I've got Ozone 5 and 6 next to each other, and the Wave Art stuff, and a couple of other toys, all nicely in that folder. And it gives you a subtle but discernible increase in your productivity, and it reduces friction when you just want to do some basic operations. That said, my primary means of organizing logic plugins is through the channel strip mechanism, which I use mostly for virtual instruments. And my philosophy there has always been organize things by function, not manufacturer, because when you're in the heat of the deadline, or anger mode, as you would call it, Alex, you need something. You need something specific. I need legato violins. I want to see all my legato violins in the same place and then just quickly A/B through them. I don't want to have to go through a memory search of how many different libraries do I think Symphobia has. I don't want to go through that process. And the channel strip mechanism, or its successor, the patch system, they just use the Mac file system. So you can copy and paste, you can make folders. They're just files on your hard drive, and you can organize them any way you want.
That's actually...
that is...
sorry, yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, that's more useful to me than the new logic mechanism. But if you do like using the direct way of loading plugins in Logic, clicking on that little button and letting the pop-up menu show your options, then I do think the new plugin organizer is an indispensable tool.
Actually, your approach of actually storing commonly used things that you need as channel strip settings is actually very, very good, I think. I think it's definitely a good tip if you're starting out. It's so hard to stop yourself from that temptation of tinkering with something when actually what you really need to be doing is actually doing the music, not sitting there trying to get optimum, compressor response and just getting that, mid-range just right. It's not really what you want to be doing when this track needs, for example, this track needs a piano and it needs it right now. Which piano should I use? What kind of compressor? Is this too much attack on here? Should I get a little bit of saturation in there to warm it up, or how wide should it be? Oh, I don't know. And you forget about the fact. Wait a moment, I need to be making a piano, and here I am tweaking a compressor. I think.
I want to do the same thing with my instruments. I've got pianos all over the place I've probably forgotten about, but if I had a little sheet here that said, here is the Bosendorfer, don't forget him, here's Galaxy surround piano, I know I have that. That would be kind of cool to just see a chart and go, oh yeah, I remember using, a great one was our episode when we were talking, a couple episodes back when we were talking about Chromophone. I'm not using it because I'm not going to be able to reach to some sort of piece of paper or some sort of easy access and flip through it and go, oh man, that Tasman would be perfect right here, and I never use that guy. Let's get in there and do it.
I think the one thing you might need to be cautious with Mike's approach is that if sometimes you may be missing out on opportunities to get slightly different sounds, slightly better sounds, if you're not using your preset channel strip. And I guess the idea is it works if you do it Mike's way. You slam it in there, you get the work done fast. Then when you get later down the track and you get to a mixing stage, then it's time to sort of think, well, maybe this compressor's not the right one, or why don't I just try that reverb instead? That's the time to do that. But if you sort of forget to do that, then you may find things sort of start sounding a bit the same, or you're missing out on different sort of sound opportunities.
The nice thing about having access to an arbitrary file hierarchy is you can actually divide patches into, here are my go-to patches, here's a bunch that I thought were kind of interesting but didn't seem that useful, and then shuffle those off in a subdirectory somewhere.
Yeah.
And in fact, this is exactly what I do. I have, like, for example, strings. I'll have a staccato articulation strings directory and then subdivided by members of the string choir. And in, say, staccato violins or short articulation violins, I have a folder, and I start with the letter Z so that it alphabetically ends up at the end, called less useful or something slightly condescending like that. And I put a couple of other sounds in there, but sometimes when I blast through Old Reliable and I don't quite find what I'm looking for, then I'll dig into that secondary instrument directory, and sometimes find something that is sort of interesting, or maybe I thought it was too eccentric at the time, but now it's the sound I'm looking for. This is really useful for things that are not analogs of real-world instrument, like synth pads. I've been spending hours of my time deciding how I'm going to organize pads and sustained harmony sounds from rev and from contact and absinthe and everything else. And you have to. So the problem you face is if you grab everything that sounds kind of cool and you put it in a directory of patches or panel strips, you defeat the purpose of creating a go-to tool set. On the other hand, if you discard things that seem a little bit eccentric or that you can't quite figure out how you use them, then you run into the trap that Alex was talking about, is that you only use a fraction of your sample library. So what I found is by having kind of the subdirectory of also check me out, I can encapsulate those other sounds, but not have them cluttering up visually my go-to list, and I can explore that if I need to.
So how often would you change up that hierarchy? Would stuff that will be in your Z directory eventually make their way up, or do they just typically stay there?
By project, maybe?
Well, no, sometimes sounds will get promoted or demoted. I'll find that I dig up some obscure sound and I use it in a project and I say, wow, this seemed kind of too eccentric and full of little noises, but I actually found this really useful. So then I'll just drag it. It's just moving a file to a different folder, and I'll put it in another directory, and I'll take it from that Z directory to the main bunch. More frequently, the opposite happens. I'll have a couple of sounds that sounded really cool when I was playing with them out of context, and then I try to drop them in a mix, and I think, this is a little bit off-putting, so I banish them. Sometimes I'll just delete the channel strip entirely and say, if I want to use this, I have to dig through Absinth's 10,000 menus again, and that has to earn its way into my tool set by jumping out at me. The next time I decide to plow through the completely comprehensive list of everything.
You use the stars, right?
Say that again?
You use, when you look, I think Absinthe has starring for their library. I know some other ones do, and I use the stars a lot.
I want to just.
Oh, lagging.
Yeah. Latency.
I want to just put in a word for if there are people out there who do the masochistic thing that I do, with creating all your own patches with synths. One interesting thing that I've found to make that more efficient is to limit yourself to one synthesizer manufacturer. And the reason that I say that is, for example, in the case of Yuhi, they've got all of these great synthesizers. If I was trying to think, okay, I want an FM sound, so I'm going to go for something that's FM. Do I choose Native Instruments FM8, or do I choose, Yuhi Basile, or do I choose Linplug Octopus, or do I choose, I can't think of FM synths right now, but anyway, it's really helpful if you're creating patches on the spot, if you're creating patches as you're writing the music, so that you don't sit there thinking about which synthesizer to use. If you have a company that you like, sticking to only the products from that company does help, because the company itself won't make products that overlap. Obviously, that's basic marketing and economy. They don't want to make products that do what their other ones can do. So the decision is made for you. You know which one to go to because it has these capabilities that is not matched by anything else that company puts out. So that's kind of the way that I found this idea of organizing effects is one thing, but organizing synthesizer plugins when you have, especially when you're using, if you're not using pre-made patches, but you're making up the sounds right there on the spot as you're writing the music, this is one thing that I've found that helps you work faster. But then don't listen to anything I say, because the way that I work is really, really esoteric and bizarre, and people think I'm strange.
Well, it's great.
It's new and awesome.
Oh, you might like to know. You guys, of course, have seen Kung Fury.
Oh yeah, I helped kickstart that.
Kung Fury's actually have a good listen to it. The music's by a great guy from Sweden called Mitch Murder. Mitch Murder actually works the same way that I do. He actually uses renoise with only software synthesizers. So.
Well, I still have to watch it. I'm so afraid of the lag that I'm going to talk over people. I'm sorry. I will listen because I still have to watch the movie. I haven't watched it yet.
Yeah, it's the Kung Fury is the greatest movie of all time. There is no point in making any more movies anymore.
It's
Wow.
as being part of the Kickstarter, I'm kind of confused because I'm supposed to get a DVD, but I didn't. But I got a download, and it was only like 30 minutes. Is that all the longer the movie is?
Yeah, the movie is 30 minutes.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I was getting the movie and not some sort of marketing half movie.
No, it's only 30 minutes.
Heard
Anyway.
good things about it.
What'd you say, Mike?
That was it.
Well,
I just said I've heard good things. It was more of an interjection than a topic.
just the lighting
the
from
lag
Kung
is
Fury.
I think Google is trying to tell us that it's time to close today's show.
Oh no.
The lag is horrible. I feel sorry for. Oh, never mind. Anyway, thanks everybody for watching the show. I can't tell if you are actually hearing my voice or if you're just seeing a picture of my ugly face, but I'm going to say it all anyway. Please like us on Facebook. Please subscribe to us on YouTube. Please tweet us on the twits. And we love having you guys along. Thanks, chatties, for joining the show, as you always do. And thanks for watching it. We get some messages I love, like some guy just drove someplace and listened to us for a bunch of hours. And I just think that's great. Thank you for doing that. And we'll keep bringing you good content as we go over new ideas. So with that, I'm going to sign off and say bye.
Bye.